Welcome back, everyone, to the cigar smoke-filled back room. I am Doug with Tusk Consulting. TuskConsulting@gmail.com. TuskConsulting@gmail.com. If you are a pro-gun Republican and you need political consulting help, drop me a line at that email address, and we will see what we can do for you. If you are not a pro-gun Republican, we're just not going to do anything. Anyhow, in the ongoing video series about things that are not discussed enough in politics, or at least not discussed honestly enough, today we're going to talk about labor and politics. It is, after all, Labor Day. Seems like a good time to do it. Before we get started, the cigar of the day is a Monte Cristo, and the bottle of the day is a Larceny Barrel Proof. Holds up rather well. Again, these are not sponsors to the program, but I wouldn't object. Anyhow, labor and politics. So, a little bit of history, just quick perspective on where people come from. The old stereotypes about organized labor and political parties do not exist. And I'm sure you're familiar with these stereotypes. That Republicans are for the country club set and Democrats are for the working man. And maybe that was true once upon a time. Maybe. The fact is, those old cliches are gone, thoroughly gone. And once upon a time, organized labor was absolutely a core support mechanism for the Democrat Party. That has changed over the last several years. It's changed in part because anytime there was conflict when Democrats had governing power, anytime there was conflict between organized labor interests and environmental interests, the Democrat Party unfailingly prioritized their environmental friends over their union friends. And that ticked them off. And you can only do that so often before people start to say, well, wait a second. Where is it written that we've got to vote Democrat for our entire lives? Just because Pappy and Grandpappy did, don't mean I got to. If you ain't working in my interest here, yo. And in fact, that has been the case. Well, especially the last dozen years or so. There's been a very pronounced shift in organized labor away from the Democrat Party. And it has been to, pro-gun Republican benefit very much. But before we get into all that, just some general thoughts here. Any work that is done, that's not criminal in nature, of course, has value. If you look down on somebody for what they do, you're a fool. Our society needs all kinds of people. It needs bricklayers and doctors. It needs electricians and chauffeurs. It needs nannies and bartenders. Any work, again, not criminal, is valuable to our society. Our society needs that work done. So before we get too far into this, let's make it real clear here. Workers have value. They do. All kinds of value. Obviously, economic value. With their labor helps to fuel the engine of our economy. They have intrinsic value as fellow human beings. Their work ethic is inspiring to others. Their political involvement is really big, and of course the important thing in this particular conversation. So let's talk about, in today's world, the divide that exists within organized labor. And it basically comes down to whether somebody is in a private sector union or a public sector union. So when I say private sector union, what do I mean? I mean somebody that works for a company that makes something or provides a service. Trade unions can be included in this. Non-governmental employees is what we're talking about here. So these could be everything from electricians to auto workers, chemical workers, steel workers, carpenters, labor union, whatever. There's all kinds of private sector unions out there, but these are not government employees. And in the private sector union, including the United Mine Workers, this is where that conflict between labor and environmental interests have been so very pronounced, right? The United Mine Workers, boy, when Democrat candidates run around saying that, we're going to get rid of coal, like, okay, what am I going to do? And they have, they don't have an answer, or if they do, it's an awful answer. Or what have you. There's all kinds of examples of this, but, the automotive industry. I mean, Democrats literally run around saying that they don't want people driving. They think the internal combustion engine is evil. Well, you tell that to a guy who's working on an engine line, at one of the big three auto plants. Like, how is that person supposed to vote for you when you're saying that he's building evil, right? It's insane. They're not going to vote against their self-interest, directly against what feeds their family. Let's just be straight about that. But it's more than just the environmental side of it. As a general rule, wage earners, people that go to work, get paid, come home, provide for their family, have shifted towards the Republican Party over the last many years. And again, we're breaking that old, trope of, Republicans are for the country club set and Democrats are for the working man. Again, that's dead and buried. Wage earners of all types have been coming to the Republican Party's side for some time now. Essentially, the core, if you want to think about it in socioeconomic terms, supporters of the Democrat Party are your multi-generational underclass, your welfare state, if you will, your elitist academics, and people that are so rich they don't know what economic policy or tax policy is because it doesn't matter to them. The highborn. And this is the irony about that country club trope I mentioned. In 2020, one of in both 16 and 20, a precinct where I live that got bluer instead of redder, because most of them got redder, but there was actually a couple precincts that got a little bit bluer. One of them was literally the precinct that contains our country club, okay? Literally. I'm not a member. But, it doesn't matter. The country club precinct got bluer. Actually went for Biden, which is just crazy. So anybody tells you, country club, it must be a bunch of Republicans. Not necessarily. In fact, the precinct containing the country club around here is a Democrat precinct. Let that sink in, okay? All those stereotypes very gone. But back to private sector union members. Again, all wage earners are coming our way. That includes private sector union members, and that is a good thing. Having said that, the exact breakdown depends on whose study you want to believe. I've seen studies that say anywhere from it's about 50-50 Republican and Democrat, which is still quite an improvement from, say, 20 years ago, to maybe not quite that good. But regardless, even in a group that's shifting our way, a roughly 50-50 breakdown, that ain't that bad. That's quite decent. But just because the membership is roughly 50-50 doesn't mean the leadership is. So this is something you have to remember. Leadership in organizations like this tends to reflect how things used to be. And so some unions, even in the private sector unions, their leadership is from the old school, from the Kennedy days, right? Or whatever, the 70s, etc. And because they grew up in a time where those tropes were believed, that, Democrats for the working man, the leadership may still think, we should just all support Democrat policies and candidates, when the membership is actually very much of a different mind. They may be very, have a very variety of views about candidates and partisan affiliation, but the leadership does not. And so just because a particular union endorses a Democrat doesn't mean that everybody in the union agrees with that. And I just, don't paint people with a broad brush just because there's some kind of endorsement. But again, private sector unions work for companies or provide services that are non-governmental. Auto workers, bricklayers, carpenters, electricians, whatever. Public sector unions, very, very different. These are unions whose members work for the government. Now, let's sail right past whether or not government employees even should be unionized, okay? That's a completely different conversation. Take up a lot of time. But here we're looking at teachers' unions, AFSCME, which is for the federal, state, county, municipal, whatever, employees, whatever it is. Anyway, these are government employees that have some kind of a union to represent them in bargaining and contracts and, that kind of thing. These are very, very different than private sector unions. Public sector unions don't have to worry as much about market forces. A private sector union, man, like if you're an auto worker and the auto industry gets clobbered because of some dumb politician's idea, that hurts them. That hurts their membership. But there's still the same number of teachers, right? They're still getting paid. So they're much more insulated from the grandiose interference of the marketplace that politicians can often have. And so the same things that push private sector union members to become more Republican, those forces are not going to be as serious a factor for a public sector union member because they're government employees. And, they're going to get paid. It's fine. So, especially the teachers' unions. The teachers' union is some of the most partisan, bitterly liberal organizations in this country right now. This is absolutely the bread and butter of the modern Democrat Party. And it is because they have become so virulent and so overwhelmingly Democrat and overwhelmingly, insanely liberal. This has become part of the reason why education is now effectively a partisan issue in America. I remember a time when it was not that terribly partisan. When, school board races, the political parties didn't really get involved in them. We do now. And if your local party isn't involved in school board races, they're fools. Because I'm here to tell you, education is now partisan. Whether or not it should be, I'm not answering that one. I'm saying it is, as the battlefield we're standing on right now. They're partisan. And the teachers' unions have made it that way. And that sucks, but that's how it is. It's a twisted mess. There is, however, an exception to this whole public sector unions tend to favor the Democrats overwhelmingly. The exception to that rule is police unions. See, police, they're government employees, right? But there are factors that the Democrats have alienated the police with. The defund the police movement. Hey, is that a threat to their livelihood? You darn right it is. And what did we say just a minute ago? All workers have value. And that includes the people who work to maintain law and order. Yeah, when you throw around words like defunding them, they may get cranky. And rightly so. And honestly, the defunding part, Democrats run around saying worse things. There's a four-letter acronym, it's ACAB, and I'll let you look it up on a search engine later on. I can assure you the graffiti that says that is not being spray painted by Republicans, okay? Those are all a bunch of hairy armpit cheerleader Democrats, full-blown commie liberals, spray painting that garbage. And so when they say stuff like that, and they say defund the police, and they say, we should send social workers instead of, police to investigate crimes and so forth, you can understand why the cops are like, bruh, we're going to go see what the Republicans got to say over here, right? Additionally, liberal soft-on-crime prosecuting attorneys. Those limp prosecutors. So the Democrats seem to find by the bucket load. Oh, that ticks off the cops. Because they bust their butt, put themselves literally in harm's way to catch these guys, and then some absolute moronic prosecutor lets them go. Or gives them the tiniest of slaps on the wrist. And the guy's like, what did I put myself in harm's way for when this, overeducated moron just let him off the hook? That can also wear on people. That says nothing about the glorious mess that the southern border is. Thank you to Biden and Harris for that lovely situation. all these things work to alienate cops who are public sector union members often, but who do not have the same overwhelming fondness for the Democrat Party that other public sector unions tend to have. So, with all that, union membership can have diverse political views just like any other group of Americans. Still, those in the private sector unions are more likely to vote Republican than those in the public sector unions. Again, an exception being our friends in blue. I am Doug with Tusk Consulting, tuskconsulting@gmail.com, tuskconsulting@gmail.com. Thanks, everybody. See you in the next one.